So the way that I see it in my business is basically that when I do practices to cultivate both the depth of my divine masculine, and for me in particular, I've found doing feminine practices helps me to imbue some of that energy into the way that I then take care of my work. And it's still hard.
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. How would you do things differently in your business the second time around? That's the question I want to tackle with you today. I've talked a lot about the stages of a rebel business, meaning a business beyond the treatment room. In episodes 118 and 119 in February, I walked us through the things you might go through as a business owner during those stages, all the way from creating your new business beyond the treatment room to exponential growth. This week, I'm talking to a business owner who's already got one thriving business and one business that's just starting out. I wanted to delve into what she's experiencing differently and what she's doing differently with the benefit of knowing so much more the second time around. I'm talking to Karen Wolfe, a therapist who specializes in working with parents and children, and with a newer focus that we're going to delve into right now. Welcome, Karen. I am so excited to talk to you.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
So you've already got a thriving practice serving kids and parents. You've already had that going on. And we're mostly not even focusing on that today. We're going to be focusing on your newer business, your newer direction in gender polarity work. And so tell me if I'm even saying that right. And can you tell us briefly how you would describe that branch of your work?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I would call it embodiment and sexual polarity. And we should definitely talk about gender and how that plays in and doesn't play in as part of it.
Yeah, can you start by telling us how you got into this branch of your work?
So I have been doing my own deep personal work since I started graduate school. Before then, too, I got really into Vipassana and went to an experiential graduate school in 2005 for psychology, and just have been doing deep work to try to understand myself, communication, relationships, and studied nonviolent communication and used it. And what got me into the embodiment and sexual polarity work is twofold. I would say one is that all the work that I had done on myself, and even though I had been successful in creating a business with your help, and I couldn't make relationship work. I wasn't able to find the kind of partner that I wanted. And I didn't know why. I was like, why is this not working? It didn't make any sense. I was doing everything that I thought I should. Along with that, because I had been working so hard to create a business from nothing, I don't come from a family that has their own businesses or has any money. I put myself through college, paid off my credit card debt, that I racked up in college. I basically had to push myself really hard to create this business. And I started it in 2008 when, the economy was in the tank. So I was burnt out and came to learn that was in the terms of the work that I do now, that I was essentially too much in my masculine and too much in what one of my teachers would even call my junior masculine, as opposed to, and I can explain what those mean, but essentially I was driving hard, and I couldn't feel my body. I couldn't feel any pleasure. I wasn't having sex in my relationship, and my relationship wasn't working. He wouldn't commit, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to leave. It was just a mess. And so that's what brought me to the work. I found Tantra was what first happened, is I found this Tantra teacher and just started opening the sort of the wounds around sexuality and desire and wanting to be wanted. And then I met a partner who was doing the sexual polarity work, and I took a class. And I remember the first class that we took, the first intensive, we were told to go on this polarity date during the intensive. We went to a lunch where we were going to really try on the masculine feminine polarity. So he was going to, from a deep place of, listening to my heart, command me, like where we were going to go, what we were going to eat. And then my job in the feminine was to reveal how it felt. And I was not used. I'm used to driving the ship. This doesn't feel good. This is scary. He's not going to choose what I want. And I'm not going to have any tools to let him know because they're telling me to use these different tools. And so I came back from that lunch, and I essentially told the workshop facilitator that I wanted to claw his eyes out because I was so upset. It's like, you're taking away all my tools. But what I found is that in learning these new tools, something completely shifted in my relationships, in my ability to feel at home in my body. And it's a work in progress, definitely not perfect by any means, but something shifted, and it even helped me to heal. It's not the only thing, but it was one of the main things I think that helped me heal physical adrenal fatigue and helped me change my lifestyle to a way that was more in tune with my body.
And so when you give me that example of the lunch, then it makes me think, because I've known you for a long time, so I'm doubting this, but it's making me wonder, is that usually what you're supposed to do? Is that if you're female identified, you're supposed to pull back, and if you're male identified, you're supposed to make decisions? And yeah, he's you shaking your head.
Yeah. Good. It's such a good question. And this is one of the reasons why this work is super triggering. Actually, Annie, especially to therapists. Every time I have therapists at my workshops or I post on a therapist group, they are the ones that are more likely to be offended. And I get why. Because, we're as therapists, we're looking out for anything that doesn't have integrity and could possibly wound, and we're hypersensitive to that. So to answer your question, I would have to explain a little bit about what I mean by masculine and feminine. And I also want to acknowledge that I've had a few different teachers, but a lot of the framework of this comes from the work of David Data, who people also tend to have a very strong reaction to. And so my understanding of the terms masculine and feminine is that all people, regardless of gender or sexual expression, have both the masculine essence and the feminine essence within us. In Taoism, they talk about it more as yin yang, but I don't know Taoism, so I can't speak from that. And it spoke to me to use the words masculine and feminine. There was something about that felt potent. So the masculine inside each of us is that which is identified with consciousness, stillness, and direction. It's the part of us that knows what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and how. It's the part of us that sees what's going on and can witness from sort of a equanimous position, right? So in the Hindu tradition, which is where these concepts come from, the penultimate divine masculine is Shiva. And Shiva sort of, he goes and he sits in a mountain and he just observes all of existence, right? So that's the masculine in us. And how it tends to show up in the day-to-day is okay, I see I have 10 emails that I need to respond to, and who am I going to respond to first? And okay, this person is upset. How do I respond to their upset? Or the kids need to be put into day camps, or, it's all the things that have to be done. But when we don't train ourselves to come from a place of depth and stillness, then we go into what one of my other teachers, Shakti Malan, talked about as the junior masculine, this sort of frenzied, frenzied. I got to figure it out and I've got to push myself. Right. So that's the masculine essence. And the feminine essence is that which is always changing. It is our emotions, its desires, its feelings in the body, its pleasure, its pain. In the natural world, you can think of it as the weather, the storms, the volcanoes, the gentle breeze. It's all the different energies, and there's a bit of a chaos to it. Like Clarissa Pinkola Estes, she's a wonderful. I mean, if anyone hasn't listened to her, I highly recommend her books, in particular Dangerous Old Woman. But in one of her books, she talks about the feminine in nature as sort of this tree that she has in her yard that hangs over into her neighbor's yard, and it drops its petals or flowers, and she sees it as beautiful, but he only sees it as chaos and dirty and messing up his lawn. And she tells the story that actually she comes home one day and he'd cut it down on his side, which basically killed it, and how tragic that was for her personally, but also as a reflection of the way that we respond to the feminine in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, here, this is making me want to ask you about, so in your business, do you notice, because I know when you and I worked together, some of the things that we worked on, and of course I can edit this out if you don't want this public, but I know some of the stuff we worked on was like how to manage like the CEO stuff and the admin stuff in a way that felt really embodied. And so this is making me really curious. Like, how do you see these different forces showing up for you as a business owner?
It's such a good question. So I still struggle. Part of the reason why this work is so important to me is because I still struggle with getting pulled into that junior masculine place. And I think a part of it is, just our society doesn't really support the deeper masculine or the feminine in us. We also don't want to be in our feminine all the time. If I was in my feminine all the time, I just might show up when I felt like it, or, say whatever I wanted. Like, we need both. We actually need both. So the way that I see it in my business is basically that I have to do, not I have to, but that when I do practices to cultivate both the depth of my divine masculine, and for me in particular, I've found doing feminine practices helps me to imbue some of that energy into the way that I then take care of my work. And it's still hard, when to check my email, like when I'm walking my dog to the park, like, should I check it? Sometimes I do, because that's my divine masculine not being strong enough. So what I find is that how it impacts my business is essentially when I do these practices, then I'm able to bring more consciousness, more awareness, more embodiment just to everything that I do, how I sit with clients and all of it.
A quick word from our sponsor, which is me. If you want to create a signature online program to grow a business beyond a traditional therapy practice, perhaps creating a coaching practice, a group program, a community, an online course, or something else your creativity is calling you to do, I would love to have you in Create Your Program. This is a small group experience. Over 5 weeks, I'll be helping a small group of therapists, healers, and coaches to create their pilot programs and then launch them to the world. We delve into niching, creating your pilot or your beta offer quickly, and developing a marketing system to grow your audience and share your program with the people who need it. Go to rebeltherapist.me/create to learn more. All right, let's get back to Karen. And you're stepping into this where you already have this other thriving branch of your business, and this is edgy, and like you get pushback from other therapists, and I'm wondering, like, what's it like to, as a business owner, to step into this edgier work that, you could just kind of rest where you are and just, keep going with what's already thriving, but you're clearly feeling driven to do this work.
Thank you. That's a good question. And I'll be really honest, it's scary. It's really scary. It's hard. I'm learning I'm not like a master practitioner. I haven't been doing this 10 years. I've been studying this work for 3 and then other tantric like work for another 3. So 6 total, but with the polarity only 3. And so I'm going to say things that are maybe not right, or maybe people are going to just kind of not take the chance or not be curious to ask more about, well, what do I mean? So it's really scary because I know how triggering it is, and I'm very passionate and about changing gender roles, sort of these stereotypical stuck gender dynamics that still happen in so many places. And for a long time, I sort of hid it. Like I noticed I didn't want my like child and family clients to find out. And I still am a little bit scared because I'm like, what are they gonna think? I don't know. It's so interesting. One of my child and family clients ended up signing up for one of my intensives, though, and I was like, it's a clashing of the worlds. So it is scary to do, and there's been a lot of fear around. Am I going to like basically destroy business that I have built up? And sometimes it makes me want to give up.
Yeah. And are you keeping the businesses very separate, like separate websites, that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, in a way I am. So I've started also doing emotionally focused therapy with couples in my therapy practice. So I have a website for all my couples work, and it includes my polarity work. So it is very separate from the child and family work, and I keep that very separate. I have a different name for it. But with the work that I do with couples, even though I don't usually recommend the couples that I see in my practice to go to the polarity workshops, because they're often working on just more fundamental being able to see each other as equals and being able to hear each other's feelings, I do just have one website for that. Otherwise, it would be 3 different businesses.
Yeah. Yeah. And with this work, are you marketing in a similar way as with the work that you do with families, or is it a different kind of marketing system?
I think in the same way, I tend to, I'll do sort of webinars or talks or Facebook Lives, or I'll write a little article, I'll share it on Facebook. I have an email list. I have separate email lists which makes sense. If I'm a parent and I want information on parenting, I don't want to get something about sexual polarity, right, and vice versa, Right. So separate email lists, and I send things out, about, anywhere from 1 to 4 times a month for the polarity work. And I have postcards and I talk to people about it. So it's pretty much the same in terms of the methods.
This is a lot of work, running two email lists and all of that. Do you ever, so this is me projecting because I am giving up my therapy practice this year and I'm, focusing. Yeah. So it's very much like, even though I still love it, it's something I'm giving up. And in fact, by the time this goes live, I will have been done for a while. But so partly I'm projecting. Are you ever thinking like one of these eventually has to go, or are you pretty content running both?
I think that I don't want to think that either of them have to go, because one of the reasons that I wanted to start doing work with couples, both in therapy and doing the polarity work, is to have some variety, because working with just kids and families, although I loved it, I was burning out. And so I can't really imagine letting go of any of them because the mix nourishes me. What I do imagine is that there may be a time like when I if and when hopefully I have a child, something's going to have to give. And I don't know if that means doing less, putting something aside for a time, hiring other people to do it for me. But I don't right now. I feel very attached to all of it.
How do you kind of manage, and this is making me think of the kind of energetic work that you're talking about. How do you spend your time in your business? Like, how do you figure out, do you do theme days or time blocking, or how do you figure out like what you're going to work on at different times?
Well, I need to have a coaching call with you to figure that out. I mean, I do schedule things in my calendar. Like I try to have at least an hour every Monday where I'm writing for my polarity work, but I don't often hold to it. So it's really just right now, it's just when I can fit it in. Everything in my life is so structured that if I structured also when I'm working on what, it would feel too rigid.
So your time with other people is so structured, you mean?
All of it. Yeah. I live in a household with my fiance and two other adults and then two kids half time. And so we have to there's a lot to structure and we're very close. So I do have associates in my child and family therapy practice that they've taken on a lot of the work around the marketing. And so that's one of the ways that I've freed up space for me to just be on the front lines in therapy and then doing my own sort of marketing work with the polarity work. Although I have hired a social media person because I found that I was getting burnt out trying to post things on social media and come up with new content all the time. And so I just delegated that out too. So I think that's one of the things that's helped me in terms of not having to schedule in time for each thing is I've delegated a bunch out. And then I'm like, okay, all I have to do is, write when I feel like it, when I'm inspired. And that's what I want to do and also the polarity work is it's more like a passion project than a business. I mean, I do make a little bit of money, but I think of it more as a passion project. And so I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it or on myself to get a lot of people or, I just want it to grow organically because I enjoy teaching the work, and in teaching it, it helps keep the practices alive for me.
Interesting. Okay. And so you're kind of like, if we were thinking of the stages of a business, which like I would think of the other business that you have with families and kids being definitely in the like expand phase where it's already thriving. You've got other people involved. It's been going for a long time. It kind of exists. It's got a life of its own. And then this one being kind of in the create stage or maybe the grow stage where it's like you've got it going and it's still not highly profitable. And it sounds like because you've got this other business, there is not a lot of pressure on it to be highly profitable.
And I'm really grateful for that partly because this work is so edgy. If I was forced to make it profitable, I would be afraid, in particular, of having to use social media because there's a lot of people can get really mean really quick, and I still don't have a very thick skin. Working on it.
How do people find you for this work?
They find me through Facebook, through Eventbrite, through friends that I have that are teaching this work but not leading workshops, who will refer them to my workshops, through teachers that I've worked with, and people who I've taken a workshop alongside with the same kind of work, and they want to do it again, and people who want to keep it alive. And I do have flyers and some word of mouth out there, but that's just, that takes time.
Before I let you go, I'm wondering if you could share with us a little bit about just how you manage your time any morning rituals that you have, anything that you've put in place that has become really helpful for you in your daily life?
Yes, thank you for asking that. This has been such a work in progress. It's taken me years to be able to carve this out, but I have about a half hour carved out every morning where I do some sort of practice. Right now, it's all feminine practice. So I'm doing breath work, I'm doing movement, I'll do expression, embodied expression. I'll put on some music. And I treated myself to a very large white sheepskin rug,
Ooh.
which living with a dog and two kids is is a thing at times. But so I'll lay on that and I do my practices. Sometimes if I feel like I'm needing more of that, depth, the stillness, I'll take some of the time and I'll meditate, or I will journal. Another thing that I try to do almost every day is I try to carve out in my schedule at least an hour and a half to 2 hour break every day, and I go for a jog.
Ooh.
Yeah. And that has been a lifesaver.
In the middle of the day?
In the middle of the day.
Wow.
So I get to be outside when it's sunny. I get to just change my clothes, just not be in my work, get to get sweaty for a minute and just sort of be in. For me, it's bliss and joy to I listen to my trance music and jog.
How cool. How far do you run?
Not very far. I mean, I don't know, the length, probably anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, depending on the amount of time that I have that day. But that's been a really important, ritual for me to break up the day, in particular being in therapy, being inside, sitting with clients, even when I'm moving around and playing, I'm using my head so much to just not have that. And so scheduling that 2 hour break, not where I'm not seeing clients, so I get to jog and then have my lunch, is life-saving.
Beautiful.
And I have lots of other rituals and practices that I do. If you want I'll just say one thing is that I do also schedule rituals with my partner. It's something that we do to practice the polarity work, to practice just loving on each other and giving to one another. We schedule that out. We schedule out different things a couple times a month. I'm so curious to hear about I didn't know you are letting go of your therapy practice. And did you do a podcast about that? Because I could just listen to it.
I haven't. And I think I will. I mentioned it in one I just released, that I just released in February, but I haven't gotten into it very much. And I think partly because I have so much love for my therapy clients, it's like I'm really thinking about well, how do I want to talk about this publicly when these are very sacred, private relationships, even though obviously my business is public. So I think, I've been really, it's just I just have so much love for my therapy practice that it's like, there's not any part of me that's like, take this job and shove it. So yeah.
That must be really hard to decide to let it go then. And are you going to be focusing on this full time? Or?
Yes. So this has already taken over as the vast majority of what I do and how I make my money and all of that. So, so it was kind of it just became clear all of a sudden, oh, this doesn't really make sense to be divided in terms of my time and energy into two businesses right now. That was my projecting where I was curious, but it's not true for everybody.
I don't know. It might be. If I have no idea what the future holds, for me, and I honor your willingness to let go when it's time to let go. You know that Mary Oliver poem?
No, I got to find it. What is it?
She it's long, of course, but then at the end she says, it's something like, to live in this world, I have learned you must do 3 things: love what is mortal, hold it close to your bones as though your life depends on it, and it does. And when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. And it sounds like that's what you're doing.
100%. I'm going to have to find that. Karen, if you could time travel to the start of your business, is there anything you would tell the Karen of that time?
Yes. So I'm thinking back 2008, having just broken my ankle, sitting on a yoga ball for 8, 9 hours a day, writing my website in pain all over my body from sitting all day. And I would tell myself to stop and to take breaks, to lay down, to move my body, to breathe, and to allow myself to rest.
Okay, beautiful. That's probably not what anybody was expecting. That's really helpful. Thank you so much, Karen. This has been such a pleasure.
Aw, yes, likewise, Annie. Just grateful for you existing in the world and our connection.
Me too. You can find out more about Karen at embodiedrelationshiptherapy.com. I want to thank Cosmo Palms for editing this podcast and Brianne Rising for taking great care of our guests. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this episode supportive, please give Rebel Therapist a rating on Apple Podcasts. It makes a huge difference in getting this podcast in front of new listeners. It's all in the Apple algorithms, and it really matters. Thank you so much for that. We're about to get over the 100 ratings threshold with your help. I'll see you next time. Wow.